All right, that pretty much brings us to 12 p.m., just a few seconds early. We'll go ahead and begin the presentation. So welcome to all of our attendees today to our Graduate Diploma in Immigration and Citizenship Law September 2024 admission cycle webinar. So this is a webinar that's going to be covering our most recent admission cycle. The application now is open for September 2024 admission consideration. And I'll go through exactly what you're expected to learn within this webinar, all the different tips and tricks I'm going to provide to you. But we want to begin, of course, with our acknowledgement of territory. So Queen's University is situated on unceded traditional Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee territory. It's important for us to constantly acknowledge the unceded lands where Queen's University is physically situated, as well as myself being here in Kingston. We want to continually acknowledge our Indigenous peoples of Canada. We want to recognize the atrocities that have been committed against them that are still coming to light to this day. It is important for us at Queen's to acknowledge indigeneity, to embrace our Indigenous population, to welcome in our self-identifying Indigenous students, and to support them every step of the way throughout their academic journey. There is still a lot more to be done in regards to indigeneity. This is a very minor step in the right direction, but there is a lot of great work being done across campus. And I encourage you that if you want to learn more about indigeneity at Queen's, focus on the Office of Indigenous Initiatives and the 4 Directions Indigenous Student Center and see what they're doing to support staff, students, faculty, and the general Kingston community. Just for some brief introductions, this is myself. I'm Don Ames. I'm the manager of admissions and recruitment for the program. I've been doing this now for 6 admission cycles, so I've got a pretty good handle and understanding of what to provide out to our prospective applicants who want to learn more about how to apply and gain admissions to our program. I'm accompanied by my admissions team here today who will be answering questions once we reach the Q&A section, which will occur later on in the presentation. First, we'll kick off with our GDipICL program overview. So Graduate Diploma in Immigration and Citizenship Law is shrunk down to GDipICL just for the purposes of this webinar and for communication with the program. And we're going to go over what the program entails, some key information that will really benefit you in understanding if this program is right for you. Then we're going to go into the admissions process. I'm going to provide details on every single one of our admission criteria, some tips for each of those criteria, and then I'm going to talk about our specific admission cycle that's open now. As I mentioned, the Q&A will open up later on in this presentation, and we will try to answer as many questions as we can once we get to that section, and then we'll wrap up. But to begin, let's go ahead and jump in and take a look at our program overview. So we have a few key highlights that we want to provide here about the Graduate Diploma in Immigration and Citizenship Law, or GDipICL program for short. The GDipICL is the only English language pathway to becoming a licensed immigration consultant in Canada. So the regulating body, the College of Immigration and Citizenship Consultants, when they were going through their restructuring and became the college, they were seeking out proposals from various post-secondary institutions to be the sole education pathway for the English language and the French language program. Queen's was the successful recipient of the English language program. Our sister program at the University de Montreal was the successful French language proposal writer. So we're the only pathway. Anybody who's interested in becoming a regulated Canadian immigration consultant must go through our program or the French language program at U of M to become eligible to write the entry to practice exam, which is a mandatory exam that's completed at the end of the studies with our program once you graduate in order to become a regulated Canadian immigration consultant. Now, there are, I know we've said that this is the only pathway to become a licensed immigration consultant in Canada. We do have international RCICs who go through our program. The College of Immigration and Citizenship Consultants no longer requires citizenship in order to write the EPE, and our program welcomes in both domestic and international students. All of the students, though, who come into our program gain a deep understanding of Canadian immigration and citizenship law, policy and procedures, and really get a fulsome understanding of how to operate as an RCIC within Canada and without. It's a really fantastic program. Our alumni are extremely successful in the endeavors that they conduct beyond this program. Already, we have a ton of RCICs who are registered and practicing, and we've only been offering this program since January of 2021. So a short period of time for our program that is already seeing significant successes with our alumni in completing the program. But we also know that this program isn't necessarily only for RCICs. Now, it is the number one pathway that we see our applicants interested in coming in for. They want to become an immigration consultant. But there are other things you can do with the studies here. We see a lot of individuals who come through our doors interested in becoming a government employee or want to work for an NGO. Possibly they're going to work for a private organization that has an international recruitment focus. This information within our program is definitely going to help individuals who are seeking out those sorts of professions. We see human resource professionals come in who want to take this work into their own businesses or the businesses they are currently working at. And there's just a lot of opportunities for people to leverage the studies that they're gaining in this program for professional success. So don't just limit yourself to thinking about the RCIC designation. It's a fantastic profession. There's going to be a lot of individuals who will want to become that upon completion of our program. There's plenty of other things you can do with the studies with this program. The final thing I want to talk about is the National Advisory Committee that guides our program. This is a group of individuals made up of current immigration consultants, current lawyers, community experts, people who will be able to provide us with structure and guidance when it comes to how we execute our program. We're dynamic. We want to make sure that we are addressing the needs of immigration and citizenship in Canada, and that our graduates are understanding the landscape as they are completing the program. A lot of people want to know what the journey looks like for them in this program. And this is a document you can actually download from our website, but I'll highlight a few key areas here. The number one thing that we stress is that there are 9 courses in total for our program. It's completed entirely online. There's no component where you have to come to Kingston to complete any schoolwork or attend any classes. There are mandatory live tutorials for each course. They are typically 2 hours in length. 2 of the courses have 3 hours of tutorials per week per course. So, for example, ICL 810 and 890, the bookend courses for our program, they have 3 hours of tutorials. All the rest of the classes have 2 hours. They are live, they are mandatory, and you have to attend in the Eastern Standard Time Zone. So while we do welcome in international students to our program, you have to make sure that you're able to accommodate the studies in the Eastern Standard Time Zone. So it's 12 p.m. right now in Kingston. Wherever you're located, you'll be able to kind of make that conversion and make sure that you attend those tutorials. The majority of the studies, though, are conducted via self-directed learning opportunities. That's things done via readings, online assessments and assignments, online interactions with your fellow students through the OnQ online platform, things that you're going to be doing outside of a classroom setting. So we really do stress that you need to be really mindful of your time management abilities and that you take the course load into consideration when you're thinking about your interest in the program. We tell students to treat their studies in this program like a full-time job. The hours are long, the hours are intensive. We don't beat around the bush about the impact that this will have on an individual's professional and personal life. We also have policies in place through our program and the School of Graduate Studies and Postdoctoral Affairs, which kind of is the house for the majority of graduate studies at Queen's, where you can't be employed full-time and take the program full-time. If you're employed full-time, you either have to become a part-time student or you have to limit your professional requirements down to a pretty small number of hours per week. We see a lot of our students take a leave for a period of time. They have to adjust their professional and personal schedules, or they need to accept a part-time study plan with the knowledge that it will take them longer to complete the program, but they will still be able to maintain their full-time employment. Even part-time students, though, should really be treating the hours very, very seriously. It is a significant impact on your life, and we want to make sure that we stress that at this point. It's not for everyone, we understand that, but for those who are able to manage the time spent in the program and the other commitments that they have in their lives, it's an extremely rewarding and successful program for you. Here are the courses that you complete for our program. So ICL 810 through 890, 9 courses in total. As I mentioned, ICL 810 and 890 have 3 hours of tutorials per week for each of the weeks in the program. So for example, a full-time student who's going to be joining the program this September, they'll take 3 hours of tutorials for the first 6 weeks. Then they'll take ICL 820 and 830 concurrently for the rest of the term. And then you'll have 4 hours of tutorials per week, 2 hours for each 820 and 830. So again, a smaller commitment for the actual live component of the course, but then you have to think about all of those additional requirements, the readings, the self-directed learning opportunities, those sorts of things need to be taken into consideration. So we base this program off of the essential competencies for RCIC practice set out by the College of Immigration and Citizenship Consultants. So if you want to learn about how we've styled our program to make sure that those who want to become RCICs are successful and can immediately begin practice, go ahead and take a look at this website. I'll be providing the college's website at the end of this presentation. Find the essential competencies and you'll see just exactly how we're aligning our learning outcomes with the essential competencies for the profession. This slide just demonstrates what a full-time and part-time study plan looks like for incoming students. So the full-time study plan, students will be able to complete the program in 3 terms, so just under 12 months, starting in September with 3 courses, then going into January with 3 courses, and then beginning the summer term with their 3 final courses for study. So full-time students starting this September will complete probably around the middle of August 2025. Part-time study plans, obviously a little bit longer. You're taking either 1 or 2 courses per term, depending on the term. And you'll be finishing up, if you start this September, in August 2026. There is a part-time study plan not listed here. It's the 36-month study plan. That's where you take 1 course per term for 9 consecutive terms. You'll complete the program in August 2027. So it's a lighter course load. The course requirements within each course is the same for full-time and part-time students, but obviously part-time students will take fewer courses. So it's a little bit of a lighter load on your academic career, basically, with our program. So apply for the study plan that's right for you. For September applications, we accept all applications for each of these study plans, both full-time and part-time. So really think about what you can manage, how it impacts your professional and personal life, and then think about making sure that you are applying for the correct pathway and that you meet our admission criteria, which we are going to get into now. So there are some specific admission criteria for all applications, and there's specific admission criteria that some applications will need to meet. I'm going to begin with the things that every single application is going to be providing with their application. And the number one admission criteria is a completed undergraduate degree with a B average. So every application, every applicant, I should say, is going to have to highlight all of the post-secondary studies that they've attempted and completed within the application. And then you're going to have to submit English PDF copies of your transcripts for all of your studies. So obviously we're going to want to see your undergraduate studies, anything at the bachelor's level, any graduate studies programs that you've attempted or completed, master's, MBA, PhD, grad diploma programs, anything from the college level that you've done. So if you've done a 2-year or 3-year diploma, or if you did a postgraduate graduate diploma at the college level, we need to see those transcripts. If you attended a CEGEP in Quebec, we'll need to see those transcripts. And then we start to get into some more unique elements of undergraduate or graduate study, such as a letter of permission study. So if you were a part of a program, say, for example, at York University, and for a term, you saw that there was a really interesting course being offered at the University of Toronto, and you received a letter of permission to take that single course and transfer it back to your program. Ideally, that course is highlighted on your York University transcript, but you should also be prepared to provide the U of T transcript as well, just to give us a fulsome assessment of what you completed at both of those institutions. The same thing goes for study abroad or exchange programs. So you're still that York University student. Say for a term you decided to go to the University of Essex in the UK. You just wanted to do a study abroad program, you wanted to travel, but you also wanted to continue on with your education at that time. We'll need to see your York University, your home transcript, as well as that study abroad transcript from the University of Essex. So this is why we start these webinars early. It's so that you have time to compile these documents and make sure you're able to upload them with your application. The final piece here are non-degree studies. So you're that same York University student, you completed your program, and you've been in the professional landscape now for 5 years, but you thought you wanted to kind of dip your toe back into studies. Maybe you really love lifelong learning, and maybe you did a couple courses at Athabasca University, an online program, and you just wanted to take a few courses for program credit. We would need to see your York University transcript as well as that Athabasca University transcript. So everything that goes into your post-secondary career is extremely important. The same thing goes for transfers. So we'll utilize the same example. You're still that York University transcript, but you didn't start your studies at York. Maybe you started your studies at the University of British Columbia. Maybe you were a local Vancouver kid and you started there, but you decided that you wanted to go to Ontario to finish up your studies. So if you transferred any of your courses to York University, it'll show on your York University transcript, but we're still going to need that UBC transcript as well. Everything that you've done goes into this post-secondary career, and we want to see everything that you've done. The rule of thumb that we provide here is if you've received credit from a post-secondary institution, document it on the application and have those documents, the transcripts in PDF format, ready to go for uploading with your application. When we talk about transcripts, we know that this is a terminology that is, it varies from institution to institution. The examples that we have on the screen are very much a North American transcript example. It has kind of a one-pager, typically in landscape format, and it breaks down all of the individual semesters by the courses that you've taken and the grades you've received. Now we know that some schools have mark sheets, which is maybe portrait style and still has the listing of all of your different terms. Perhaps you're from an institution where each term has one page of a document, and for a 4-year program, you have 8 different pages for 8 different terms. We'll need to see everything. This is just an example of what we're looking at when it comes to official documentation. A lot of the transcripts globally will have the same criteria when it comes to making it a document that will accept for the admission review process. Primarily that it is listed that it's an official transcript. It has some sort of seal or insignia from your institution. It's signed by somebody who is in a position of authority within that institution. Those are sort of the criteria we're looking for. We're not seeking out unofficial documents, print-offs from your student accounts. Those won't suffice. We'll need to see documents like that, which is why you can go back to your post-secondary institutions and ask for these documents in English PDF format now. What we're really specifically looking for is the item that's circled here, though. We want to see a listing of the courses you've taken, the grades you've achieved, and the credit associated with each of those courses. That's the primary goal of how we conduct our assessment. And in this example, what I've circled here is an individual term. It looks like it's the 6th term, so it would be the winter term of this person's 3rd year. We need to see everything. We want to see a breakdown of all of your courses from year 1 until you completed the entire program. The image on the right-hand side there is the reverse side of this sample transcript. It gives us a little bit of information about how this school manages transfer credits, exchange courses, failures, replacement courses, internal and external courses. Like it gives us kind of a breakdown of the lettering they utilize. It also provides us with a breakdown of how they mark their courses. So if you have this information on the reverse side of one of your transcripts, provide one copy of it with your PDFs and upload it with your application. Another document you should really be considering providing with your PDF transcripts is a copy of your diploma or degree certificate. Now, a lot of transcripts do highlight the degree completed on your transcript itself and the date that that degree was conferred. Many don't, though, and the only way we're going to know if you've completed a program is through physical proof via your documentation. So if you have a copy of your degree or diploma certificate, scan it in black and white or have it provided by your post-secondary institution. What we need to see, though, is the program you completed and the conferral date. Again, both of those documents are going to be integral to the admissions process, so make sure you're starting this process now to gather the documentation and have it ready for uploading. A comment on WES or third-party assessments. We know a lot of individuals have to get their transcripts assessed by WES or IQAS or one of or ECC, I believe, is another one of the organizations. We don't accept those documents in place of official transcripts. You can provide them in addition to your official transcripts, but you can't solely provide those. They won't be accepted for the admission review process. So have everything that you have together ready to go in a couple different PDF files and submit them with your application. Let's cover some tips here. So I've talked about PDFs as being the primary way that you deliver your documents. It's absolutely the case. We value that you have those documents up front to provide with your application. So if you possess your own physical copies, if they're unsealed, if they've been opened, go ahead and have those scanned and provide those with your application. We do encourage that you scan them in black and white to keep the file size low. And my recommendation is actually to create a PDF document for each of your different credentials. So for example, that York University student that we were talking about earlier, they started at UBC, they went to York, then they did a letter of permission course at the University of Toronto, and they did some exchange at the University of Essex. What you should do is you should create one PDF document for your bachelor's studies. That would include your UBC transcript, your York transcript, your U of T transcript, and your University of Essex transcript all together into one. If the file size is too big, you can then break it down, but then you know that you have all of your bachelor's documents together. If that same York University student later went on to do their MBA, then have a second document for graduate level studies and have your MBA transcript ready there. The more you are organized and prepared, the better this admission process is going to be for yourself and for me and my admissions team. We really encourage that you have all of the pages of your transcripts together, all of your years. We're not solely looking for your highest level of studies. We're not looking for your best years or best semesters. You need to provide everything. And if possible, provide your degree certificate as well with your documents. If you can't access your transcripts, or maybe your university doesn't send documents directly to you, you can have those arranged to be sent from your post-secondary institutions directly to the School of Graduate Studies and Postdoctoral Affairs Office, or SGSPA for short. They can be sent via email, fax, or physical mail. And I'm going to provide a link at the end of this session to see the how to apply page with SGSPA. And there's a drop down called Step 2, Compile Documentation, with all of the contact details if you can only have your post-secondary institutions deliver transcripts on your behalf for the admission review process. The more documents you have, the better, and make sure, again, you have all of your transcripts provided. Another element that all applications will have for the admission process are references. Every application is going to require 2 references, either professional or academic. There are breakdowns for each of these different types of references, so let's go ahead and take a look at that now. A professional reference is a current or former manager or supervisor from a place of business that you currently or previously worked for. They're an individual who identifies themselves as your supervisor or manager. They have seen your professionalism and your abilities to operate within a professional workspace, as well as somebody that's going to be able to complete the reference in full on your behalf. So think about a boss or somebody in a position of authority from your previous or current workplace that you would be willing to have them provide a document on your behalf to talk about your ability in a professional setting. Every single application needs one professional reference at minimum. Many applications are going to have two professional references unless you've attended a post-secondary institution program within the last 2 years. Then you can provide an academic reference in addition to one professional reference. So an academic reference is very similar. It's a professor or instructor from a current or former post-secondary institution, someone who's seen you operate within the classroom, who can speak to your academic abilities, and someone who's willing to complete the reference document on your behalf in full. Again, not everybody is going to be eligible to provide an academic reference. So at this point, we're into February 2024. If you've attended a post-secondary program prior to February 2022, you don't need to provide an academic reference. You would provide two professional references at that point. If you attended a postgraduate diploma program in May of 2023, if you had a really good connection with an instructor or professor, then you can utilize an academic reference in addition to a professional reference. There is a key component here that I want to stress when it comes to reference documents and applications. Applicants don't submit any documentation on their own behalf in regards to references or referee documents that maybe have been submitted to you. You are going to provide the contact information for two referees within your application. And then once your application is paid for and submitted officially, emails will go out to each of those referees, asking them to provide documentation directly back to the SGSPA office. So that's why we really encourage you to talk to your references and have up-to-date contact information for them. You're going to enter into the application their name, full name, current title, current organization, and their preferred email address. So it's an email address where they will receive these documents and be able to fill them out on your behalf. Make sure the spelling of all of this information is correct. Sometimes somebody will miss the M in .com. Emails won't then get to that individual. And what we really do encourage is talking to your references ahead of time, is because once you have that information in the system, you've submitted and paid for your application, those emails automatically go out. You can then contact your reference again and say, my application's in. Make sure you're on the lookout for the emails that are coming from the SGSPA office. They may go to a junk or spam folder, so have them checked immediately following the submission of your application. It's an automated process. It happens pretty instantaneously once you click that submit and you've paid for your application. So again, talk to your references ahead of time, during the admissions process, even afterwards. It's really key that you're aware of what's been submitted and when. Another key component for references is that they don't come from family members, friends, colleagues, coworkers, classmates. They need to be from individuals in positions of authority or leadership in either a professional or academic setting, and they can't be from anybody related to you or friendly with you in kind of a non-managerial capacity. Really make sure with your references when you're talking to them that they are going to fill out the forms in full. We receive a few applications every single term, and a reference document is pretty blank. Minimal narrative or no narrative is provided at all. Ask them to fill out this information in full. This is one of those rare opportunities where we actually get to receive non-numerical values for the assessment. We utilize the transcripts for GPA calculation. References and your statement of interest response are the only way that we're going to be receiving kind of additional materials that fall outside of your course grades outside of your post-secondary career. So really stress that it is important for them to provide a proper narrative. Utilize references that you've interacted with, that you know that they know you, and are going to provide really good information on your behalf. And as I've already mentioned, all applications must have at least one professional reference. Volunteer experience can be utilized for a professional reference. So if you have a volunteer coordinator or supervisor that you've had a really great relationship with, that can be acceptable for the reference process. Also, we know that there are individuals who have been self-employed for maybe a period of time. Perhaps you've been retired for a while and you don't have those professional references. You don't have, you're not in touch with those individuals anymore. I encourage you to email our office at immigrationdiploma@queensu.ca so we can discuss your situation on a one-on-one basis. The final component that every single application is going to provide is the personal statement of interest response. So the personal statement of interest, or PSI for short, is a question that we ask you to gauge your rationales to why you're interested in applying for this program. In the past, we've asked 2 questions. Now we're down to 1. So we only ask you a single question. There's a 400-word maximum or 2,000 character maximum. So we ask for 400-word maximums for our statements. The SGSPA application has a limit of 2,000 characters. So whichever limit you meet first, that is the cap on your statement. And this is your opportunity to tell us about you. Utilize the space in full as our number 1 tip. Don't submit a single line or a couple lines or maybe even a few words. This is a place to really take that 400-word maximum and work with the question at hand to answer it in full and to tell us about yourself. Right from the heart, take your time with this response. We really want to hear why you're interested in this program through the answering of this question. The final point that I'll make on this is that it needs to come from you directly. Nobody should be assisting you with this, and do not utilize AI generation technology in writing your statement. Any AI generation that is identified, and we have very easy ways of identifying it now, that application will be immediately withdrawn from admission consideration. This needs to come from you, so utilize it, the full space, as best as possible. Let's shift focus now. These were all requirements that every single applicant needed to provide for admission consideration. The next item, some applications are going to need to provide this. And the first thing that we're going to look at are English Language Proficiency Test Scores, or ELPT scores for short. Now, many applicants are going to have to provide an ELPT score for admission consideration. And it's important for you to know what scores we accept, what scores we don't accept, and what the exemption criteria are. Because there are ways for those who don't self-identify as a native English speaker to still meet an exemption criteria and not have to provide an ELPT score for the admission review process. And I stress that this is a part of the admission review process. This isn't something that you provide at a later date or provide during your studies with our program. This needs to be provided for our assessment in order for you to be eligible for the program. So for everything when it comes to the ELPT score requirement, be honest, be open, be understanding of the exemptions. And if you don't meet the criteria, make sure you provide that ELPT score by the document deadline of May 1st for our application. So we accept 4 different types of ELPTs. We accept KLCE, IELTS Academic, TOEFL IBT, and TOEFL PBT. Now, the first 3 have both an online and a test center version. We accept both of those for the admission review process. TOEFL PBT, I believe, is only at a test center. It's only paper-based. And we haven't seen any of those come through. So we've only seen those first 3. And again, we accept the online home version as well as the in-person test center version. And you can see what the scores are there. KLCE, we need an overall 70 with no band below 70. IELTS Academic, it's an overall 7.0 with no band below 7.0. TOEFL IBT, it's an overall 101 score. All bands need to be at 25 out of 30, except for listening, which needs to be at 26 out of 30. We also accept 1 skill retake for the IELTS score. So if you have one category that's below 7.0, you can utilize 1 skill retake to increase that one. The tests we do not accept. We don't accept CELPIP, we don't accept IELTS, CLB, Pearson, Duolingo, or any other test that's out there that's not the ones that I've mentioned previously. Please don't request us to accept these. We don't utilize them. We only accept KLCE, IELTS Academic, and the 2 TOEFL tests. Also, we only accept ELPTs that are no older than 24 months from the month of your application. So any ELPT that is older than February 2022, if you are applying now, we cannot utilize within the application process. Make sure it is up to date and it is one of the approved tests that we accept. Now let's take a look at the exemption criteria. So these are means where you may be eligible to apply without having to provide an ELPT score. The first exemption criteria is that you self-identify as a native English speaker. This is tricky. This is a very tricky definition because there is no definition really of what a native English speaker is. We understand that a lot of individuals are going to apply to this program where English is not their mother language. Canada values multiculturalism. Our program values multiculturalism, and we want you to maintain your relationship with your mother language. Maybe it is a familial thing you communicate with your family with or your friends. You have a strong community where that is the primary language that you utilize. That's fantastic, and we welcome that. But when it comes to studying our program, it's only done in English. So if you don't identify as a native English speaker, you're going to have to demonstrate that you're going to be English language proficient for our program. So again, that's why that ELPT score is so integral to the admissions process. There are many different ways that you could maybe take a look at whether or not you are a native English speaker. Some of the things you should be considering is if English is your primary and sole language you utilize or have been utilizing ever since your adolescence. It is the only language you've been educated in. It is the only language you communicate in. It's the only language you work in. You've not taken any English as a second language courses. You haven't been required to provide an ELPT score for any other reason outside of maybe the immigration process. But another criteria is English is the official language of the country of origin where you come from. There are lots of parameters. You really need to think about this. I recommend that if you don't feel you're a native English speaker, absolutely do not state that you are a native English speaker on the application. It should be a no-brainer to individuals when they're thinking about this. If you have any doubts, start to consider the ELPT score requirement for the admissions process, unless you meet one of our other criteria. The other criteria that I want to highlight here is our education exemption criteria. We have changed this since our last application, so things are a little bit different. So our education exemption criteria is that you've completed 4 or more years of consecutive full-time academic study at a university where English is the official language of instruction. Lots to unpack there. Let's go through it piece by piece. 4 or more years of consecutive full-time academic study. 4 or more years of consecutive study is a lot of time. It is a full honors bachelor's degree. It is a general 3-year degree, plus an immediate 1-year master's degree to follow. There can't be any break in your studies for longer than a single term, like the standard fall, winter, and a summer break structure, or else you don't qualify for the exemption anymore. So for example, let's go back to that York University individual. Say they were doing their master's at York University in the year of 2020. It was a 2020 to 2022 master's program. If that individual studied at the University of Karachi prior to that, they completed a 3-year degree. They studied from 2012 to 2015, and they studied entirely in English. That 3-year credential has a pretty significant gap between it and the master's study. 3 years of study is not sufficient to meet this requirement on its own. Now, if that person were to have done their 3 years of study, 2012 to 2015, and then immediately went into their master's program following that, with only a term break between the bachelor's and the master, that would meet because that master's program would be 2 years plus 3 years. That's a total of 5. So it's a pretty strict requirement when it comes to years. We know there are a lot of 3-year programs out there. An individual will have to have immediately followed that with another year's study to be eligible for this exemption. Has to be at a university. College programs do not count towards this exemption. So if you did those 3 years at the University of Karachi and then you went to Algonquin College for a year, That's a break in that consecutive years of study at a university, and you're no longer eligible for the exemption. Also, English as an official language of instruction needs to be identified to be eligible. Also, full-time study is really important here. Maybe you were 4 years at a institution, um, all in English, but for one term, you had to reduce your workload down to part-time for a variety of reasons. That's a disruption of those 4 consecutive years of full-time study. We have to see that you were a full-time student and the medium of instruction was English. And the way that you demonstrate that is by providing proof from your post-secondary institution. Have them submit a letter directly to our office indicating those items. Lots of consideration goes into this. It's a tight definition to kind of lock into for this exemption. If you don't meet it, you have to provide an ELPT score for the admissions process. We will not utilize other consideration for exemption criteria. Make sure you review this on our website. They're all detailed, and you have an understanding when you go into the application if you meet the criteria or not. The final exemption is a little bit different. It's something that you do after you apply for the program. It's attending our ESLA 150 program with the Queen's School of English and achieving a minimum A grade. So this is something that if you wanted to do this, instead of submitting an ELPT score, you apply for this via the application. You submit all of your other documentation. If you are academically eligible for admission consideration, we will provide a conditional letter of offer. And the condition is that in the fall term, you begin your ESLA 150 studies. And if you meet the A grade, you won't begin the GDipICL until the following January. So it will add an additional term to everybody's studies, whoever attends ESLA 150. It is an expensive program. It's about $5,800 for an intensive single term. It is intensive. It's all online. And there is an additional testing requirement that the School of English conducts to make sure that anybody that we offer up for consideration for this program can meet the A grade. It's not for everybody, so just be really mindful of the consideration for that. Some tips when it comes to the ELPT scores. If you don't meet at least one of our exemption criteria, you'll need to submit an ELPT score. Start preparing for that now, because while you can submit your application up until April 1st, you'll have until May 1st to submit documentation, including your ELPT score. So prepare now. I've taken one of these tests myself. They are stressful. So just make sure you are preparing for it accordingly and you're able to achieve the score that has been outlined in this presentation and on our website. Another tip is do not request any additional exemption consideration. We don't take consideration for professional experience, citizenship, or geographic location. Doesn't matter if you're a Canadian citizen, PR, or someone with no status, everybody may be required to submit an ELPT score for our program. We also aren't going to utilize that you've been working in Canada for 10 years in English. We can't utilize that for our assessment. We will not grant exemptions based on that criteria. So really make sure you're providing everything that you can honestly with your application. And if you need that ELPT score because you don't meet one of our exemption criteria, make sure you're ready to submit that. Also note that throughout the admissions process, our admissions committee reserves the right to request an ELPT score from any applicant, even if you meet one of the exemption criteria. So just think about that consideration and prepare accordingly. So that covers the admission criteria. Just a little bit of information about the admission cycle. Our application is open now for September 2024. We're accepting both full and part-time applications for admission consideration for this intake. We have updated our admission criteria if you've applied with us prior. So make sure you are reviewing that in these sessions, which is great, or via our website. And review our website for all pertinent information about the admissions process and about our program. Applications are due on April 1st by end of day. So you have just around, just under 2 months now to complete your application for admission consideration. Now, anybody who submits an application will then have until May 1st to submit documents. So like I mentioned with ELPT scores, you can apply now with the knowledge that you have to submit that ELPT score by May 1st. So don't hesitate if you really are interested in this program. You apply for the program via the SGSPA application system. I will provide a link to their how to apply page. This is the application for standard full-time and part-time students, as well as anybody who's applying via the access pathway. I'm actually having a specific access pathway webinar next week. It talks about those who may not meet the academic admission criteria and goes over how you can utilize professional experience to be considered for admission for our program. There's going to be a link provided for all of our upcoming sessions. Register for the Access Pathway session if you want to learn more. The application fee is non-refundable. It's $110. You're only applying for this intake for September 2024. We don't then move applications to future intakes. So you're only applying for September 2024, and the application fee is non-refundable. There is going to be a tuition deposit now with incoming students. It's non-refundable as well, but that is another financial consideration you should take in mind when it comes to our program. There will be a small amount required up front to prepare for the incoming term. So more information about that is available on our website, or will be available within the next week. So just learn more about the tuition deposit once you've considered and you're ready to apply for the program. Decisions are going to be sent in late June or early July. It's a lengthy process from this point. We receive a ton of applications for admission consideration. We really want to make sure we provide everybody with consideration. So get your applications in by the deadline. It's not a first come, first served situation. We will review all completed applications that have all documents submitted. And we have a very established process to pre-assess and then assess applications. We'll be in touch if there are any additional documentation required. It is a long process. Prepare yourself for not knowing what the status is of your application until the end of June into early July. We do what we can for all of our students. September is our larger intake as well compared to January. So we do receive more applications for September than we do January. The intra-student pathway, it's not something that we discuss at this presentation. It's not exactly the pathway for you to be completing the full program. It's more for professional development opportunities, individuals who are just interested in a course or two in our program. More information about the intra-student progression is on our website. Some final tips before I open up the Q&A. Review everything before you submit your application. Check the spelling of your name and your email address twice. We've seen people who have misspelt their name, misspelt their email address. Email address is especially bad because that's the #1 way that we communicate with you. If you leave out a letter or a number or a symbol, we're not going to be able to provide any information on your application correctly. So make sure you are reviewing everything. You're being honest in your submissions within your application. No AI generation technology is utilized anywhere. You have the correct contact information for your 2 references. And then once you're ready to submit, then you click that submit button and pay that $110 non-refundable fee. Have all of your documentation ready. I've talked extensively about the PDF formats of them. Have those together and ready to go with the application. If you don't have access to your documents now, prepare to have documents submitted to the SGSPA office on your behalf. Any additional documentation that we require, we'll email you about, and you'll deliver them to us directly. Monitor your email address for up-to-date information from our office as well as SGSPA in regards to your application. Work with your referees before and after you submit your application. The #1 reason that we don't assess applications is because they're incomplete. A document is missing. And the #1 document that tends to go missing when it comes to applications are reference documents. So talk to your referees, work with them, make sure you have their up-to-date contact information. I've already mentioned the application fee is non-refundable. Only apply when you are ready. All right. I'm going to open up the Q&A. Some key information here. Don't include personal information in the Q&A in your question to us. Don't spam your question multiple times. We will get to everybody as best as we can, and ask one question at a time. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the Q&A now, and you can also upvote questions. You can give them a thumbs up so that we see what questions are most popular, and I'll be able to respond to those verbally. And the rest are going to be written responses from my admissions team who's here today. Somebody's already asked about international students and study permits. We don't require any study permit or visa. We are not PGWP eligible, though, so keep that in mind. Somebody's asking about IELTS academic. They had a 7.5 overall, but a 6.5 in one of the components. Is this acceptable? It is not. The requirement is a 7.0 in all categories. That is a stringent requirement for us for the admissions process. So if you don't have, if you're not able to, or if you haven't met the overall 7.0 and each band 7.0 or higher, talk to IELTS and see what you can do to upgrade that one score. If you have multiple bands that are below 7.0, the one skill retake isn't going to be for you. You're going to have to redo the entire test, work with IELTS, and see what you can do. We've already talked about that one. Somebody's asking if a B minor is accepted. I'm assuming B minus. B minus is not an acceptable grade for our program for the standard entry. You have to have a B average. A B average on the Queen scale is a 3.0 on a 4.3 scale, or in percentage term, that's a 73 to 76.9%. Now, that's not going to translate equally over to every single institution. We know that many institutions in India use a percentage scale that doesn't quite align with that system. Anybody that's typically at a second division upper or higher should meet the B average. Anybody at second division lower or below, third or pass, that doesn't meet the B average, and you'll have to consider that access pathway. But the access pathway is only available for those who have a minimum of 5 years of relevant professional experience. Sign up for our access pathway webinar next week. Speaking of webinars, I have the schedule here, and I will now put the links in the chat. That was actually a good indicator for me to put links in the chat to send out to everybody. Ooh, I'll have to copy that again. Ooh, maybe something's missing. So there's the first half, and I'm going to be sending the second half here. So this is key information and links that everybody should be hanging on to, and it gives you everything that you need. It has the link to where you can register for future sessions, our website, the CICC's website, the SGSPA how to apply website, all key information. Our tuition and financing page, really important stuff. For clarification, the PSI can be up to 2,000 words if we submit it to SGSPA. 2,000 words, absolutely not. 2,000 characters is the SGSPA limit. So that's roughly within the 400 word count. Some will be over based on the types of words that they utilize. What I recommend when it comes to the personal statement of interest response is to work on it in Word. You can do the word count and the character count there with spaces or without spaces. Utilize that to produce your statement and then copy and paste it into the application. Whichever one you meet first, that's going to be your limit. So if you're at 375 words, but you have 2,100 characters, you're going to have to drop that character limit down to 1,000 or 2,000, sorry. Is the program exclusively for people who their bachelor's degree is related with law or immigration? Or if I have a bachelor in another discipline, will I still be considered for admission? Absolutely, you will be considered. This is not a program strictly for people who took a bachelor's in law or their LLB or their JD program, or they have some sort of immigration degree. This is for everybody. Our program has fine arts students, nursing, engineering, Bachelor of Technology applicants. We have the whole gamut of different backgrounds because we know that coming into the immigration consultancy profession might be a second or even a third career for a lot of our individuals. Our age ranges from early 20s to early 70s for this program. We accept all different types of students. We accept domestic, international, citizens, permanent residents, no status, every single type of background that you can think of, provided that they meet the admission criteria and have a rational statement that tells us why they're interested in the program. And of course, they meet all the additional admission criteria. We'll definitely review an application for consideration. We're just getting pretty high here in questions. I'm going to go ahead and turn off questions for now. For anybody who hasn't asked a question yet, you can upvote other questions just to see if there's something there that you maybe want answered. What are the number of students that are accepted? Everybody asks this question every single webinar. We don't provide that information out. The only thing that we say is that we are very competitive. We receive more applications than spaces for our program, and we have more qualified applicants than we have spaces. It's extremely competitive, which is why we encourage people to attend these sessions and learn more and make sure that their application is complete so that we can review it in full. The September intake is larger than the January intake, so keep that in mind as well. I have a question on English language exemptions. I did my bachelor's 4 years full-time from university in India, where mode of instruction was English. I completed in 2009. Do I qualify for English language exemption? So in that case, you're going to have to provide proof within your application that you completed 4 years of study, that the medium of instruction was English, and that you were full-time in all 4 years. So start gathering that proof now. There's not a time frame on when you completed or attended those studies. It's just that you meet all the other criteria within that the exemption. How do you assess GPA for people with an international diploma? We have our means. We have great international credential assessment tools that we utilize. We have great sites that we pull to make sure that the degrees are accredited. We don't provide the details as to how we assess them, but what we can say is we try to do the best thing for the applicant. So it's whatever documentation is provided, we try to give a fulsome assessment on whatever is provided. We're extremely thorough. I would say we're one of the top graduate programs on campus that does thorough investigation and review of transcripts. And I'm extremely proud of my team for the work that they do when it comes to assessments. We're really good at what we do. We've been doing this for a long time now, and we're extremely proud of the students that we bring into this program. I've completed a diploma and have a gap of 2 to 3 years before I transferred my credits to university for a bachelor's degree. Will I be eligible for exemption? That's a tough question. So a diploma program, those studies wouldn't count in the first place because they're not at a university level. If you completed 4 years when you attended that university, you would be eligible. If you did not, so say your transfer credit were good enough for 2 years of study, and then you completed 2 years, you technically have only completed 2 years at the university level. So we don't take, also with WES, a WES transcript may take a 3-year program and deem it to be equivalent of a 4-year bachelor's degree here in Canada. That doesn't mean you completed 4 years of study. It means you completed the equivalent of a 4-year program, but you still only completed 3 physical years of study at whatever home institution that you did. It has to be 4 full years of academic study, full-time at a university where the medium of instruction was English. So that question that I've just answered doesn't look like you'd be eligible. However, you need to provide these documents with your application. That's the only time we're going to provide you with a decision, is with an application and with all documents submitted. What's the part-time classes timing roughly? Will they be in the evening? So all tutorials, so let's back up. Full-time and part-time students have the exact same requirements within each class. So let's take, for example, a full-time student and a part-time student starting this September. Everybody, so both of those students are going to take ICL 810, the first introductory course. It's that 12-week course that's condensed down to 6 weeks. It's very intensive. All students are going to take that course first. So our full-time student and our part-time student are in ICL 810 together. The tutorials will take place on either a weeknight evening between 6 and 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, or they'll take place on a weekend midday, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. There's also there's a 1 hour plenary tutorial that will take place one evening for an hour. So that's where the 3 hours of tutorials come from. So a student incoming into our program will select which tutorial type they prefer, weeknight evening or weekend midday. So that's the only mandatory time that you need to be live for a course. The rest of the course study is conducted via self-directed learning. So for the rest of the 6 weeks, you'll have 3 hours of tutorials for each of those 6 weeks. Then on the rest of the course, you're doing the work on your own. Both full-time and part-time students will do the exact same work within the course. Then when the course is completed, a full-time student will begin their studies in ICL 820 and 830, and a part-time student on a 24-month plan will just go into 820. So that's the only difference between the two. And that's the timing of the courses, weeknight evenings or weekend middays. Somebody who's owned their own business for the last 10 years, what references can work with me? Email our office, immigrationdiploma@queensu.ca. We'll need to speak with you on a one-on-one basis. We're not going to provide any details specific to your case within this webinar today. And I'll go ahead and put some additional contact information up on our screen here. Somebody's asking, I completed my bachelor's 2014 to 2018, 4 years from a university in India, which has English as their primary language of communication and studies. Do I still need to provide an English language test score? I mean, in that situation, your years match up, but we still need proof. We need to receive your transcripts and a letter from your institution indicating that you were a full-time student when you started and ended, and that the medium of instruction was entirely in English. Once you provide that, we'll review, and then we'll let you know if you meet the education exemption or if you need to provide an ELPT score. We're just at 1 p.m. now. We're going to stick around and answer the questions that are currently in the Q&A. So if you want to stick around and upvote some more questions, here are our responses. We'll be here. How many years do you look at to calculate a B average? We look at every year, all years. We look at everything for a GPA consideration. We don't take into account your best years or your last few years. We look at everything. If I have less than a BA average in undergrad, but higher than B average in master's, will this be acceptable? So our primary basis is done on the bachelor's degree. We ask for everything so that we can do a fulsome assessment of your entire post-secondary studies. I can't provide any specific guarantees that master's programs will help boost that overall average. I mean, if you're very, very, very close to that B average, it might support, but you should be basing all of your admission decisions on your undergraduate studies. If you didn't achieve a B average on your undergraduate studies, but you're kind of within a few points, you can do some upgrading at this point. You could work on an online program like Athabasca University. You could go and attend some of their courses. You could attend the Queen's Faculty of Law's Certificate in Law program. That's 4 courses, all online, done on a part-time basis at the undergraduate level. And you're kind of getting a sense of what law is like at Queen's by going through that program, while also bolstering your overall or your cumulative GPA from your undergrad studies. So there are means to do some upgrading that you can take advantage of now. If you need to do extensive upgrading, this might not be the term for you to apply. You might be looking at maybe September 2025 or later. But just take into consideration, you can upgrade now to work on your overall, your cumulative GPA in order to meet the B average. During the diploma, is there monthly tests? What is the passing score, and what if someone fails the monthly test? So there's not monthly tests per se. There are quizzes within there. There's no exams for our courses. You need to meet a B- or a B- grade for all of our courses in order to move on to the next course. If an individual fails a class, which we know it happens occasionally, you will have a chance to retake that class in the next semester. So you will have to wait until the next semester to continue your studies, and you'll have to redo the course. You'll also have to repay the tuition. So really be prepared when it comes to this program. The first course is a pressure cooker. It's tricky, but after that, it does lighten up considerably. Students who successfully pass 810 do very well in the program overall. Let's see if there's any other questions. This individual is asking about not having any professional references. Again, reach out to our office via email, immigrationdiploma@queensu.ca. Anybody who has some questions around what references they should be providing if they don't or can't access professional references should be contacting us via email so we can work with you one-on-one. So anybody who's attended the University de Montreal program, there is transfer credit consideration for those individuals. It's a maximum of 4 courses. We need you to complete the majority of studies at Queen's. Even if you completed almost all of the programs or all of the courses at the U of M, we would need you to complete at least 5 courses with us. You have to meet a certain grade as well with the courses that you completed at U of M to be considered for transfer credit. Plus, you also need to meet the admission criteria, but it is possible for individuals to transfer into our program from the U of M program. No transfer credit are guaranteed, so we really can't provide any guarantees at that point, but still, it's possible. Why an IELTS exam result would have a 2-year expiry? What's the rationale for this? So that is a good question. This is something that's established by many different programs across not only our institution, but multiple institutions. There is a limit that demonstrates what your English language proficiency is on a test, and that limit is 2 years. Studies have found that after 2 years, English language proficiency, if not readily utilized or kind of frequently tested, wanes and it could decrease. So that's why we have that limitation on the score and the expiry. So that's the rationale that we put in. We're extremely strict on that. So if you have an ELPT that's outside of the 2-year window, you're going to have to retake it. All right, we have a few questions left, still a few people here. We'll see what else we can answer. I completed my graduate studies in May and started my postgraduate in January of this year. Does this work? Will it be considered continuous? May to January. I mean, that would mean that probably the fall term would have been off. But if you didn't do any summer studies, so if that was you finished up your winter term, so that you finished up at the end of April, technically, where classes were done. So May is going to be that might be a correct end. It may have been actually April, and you just finished up because May 1st is like, well, that's the end of the winter term. So we'd have to see the transcript. I wouldn't guarantee anything because there's technically possibly 2 terms that you've missed studies, both the summer and the fall term of that year. So that may not meet the admission or the exemption criteria. So that would be something you'd have to send in and possibly be prepared to write an ELPT if that doesn't meet the consecutive full-time study. One final question, in your opinion, is this a substantially more fruitful career than just remaining as an immigration paralegal working under a lawyer? That's going to vary from individual to individual. I mean, Canada has specific rules around what paralegals can do in the immigration landscape. I mean, that's a fantastic career. We would say nothing negative. We have only nothing but positive things to say about paralegals in the legal profession here in Canada. So you'd have to kind of take that into consideration and take a look at what a paralegal is limited to do versus what an immigration consultant can do in the landscape. If you find that there are significant components that an RCIC can do that a paralegal cannot, and you wouldn't get that experience in working with that lawyer, I'd say take a consideration into this program. I think the program is very interesting and would pad anybody's resume when it comes to the additional experience and knowledge you're gaining in any profession. But if you are comfortable with what you're doing as a paralegal and you feel that it's fulfilling, you're doing the things that really interest you and that you want to do, you're welcome to remain with the situation that you have. I think it's going to be a personal preference, and we're here to answer any questions. If you've looked into it and you find that there's some differences between the 2 professions and you want to learn more, email us and ask us for more information. That ends the Q&A portion for today's webinar. So again, Thanks everybody for participating in the session today. We hope it was informative. We hope that we've provided the information that will really benefit you when considering this program. If you need more information, we will have other webinars available. I've already sent the links in the chat. I will actually just go ahead and resend all of the links again, because it's never hurts to have more knowledge about the program. Take a look at the link tree. Like I said, I'm going to have an access pathway specific webinar next week, as well as a specific webinar on transcripts and ELPTs, and one on references and ELPTs. I'll be working through some scenarios at those webinars that will be really helpful, hopefully, on understanding what the requirements are. But for now, thank you again for attending. We hope it was informative. Email us at immigrationdiploma@queensu.ca if you have any additional questions or attend a future session. Thank you very much. Go and have yourself a great day. Take care.